Stories of slavery do not interest us much. Literature rarely holds forth on this subject. However, here, bitter lands of sugar, we feel overwhelmed by this knot of memories that sours us with forgettings and shrieking vectors. Whenever our speech wants to take shape, it turns toward remembrance, as if drawn to a wellspring of still wavering waters for which we yearn with an unquenchable thirst. Thus did the story of that slave old man make its way to me. Hey guys, I'm back again, and I'm here with a review of Slave Old Man by Patrick Chamoiseau. I read to you, I think it's the second paragraph of this novel, and I think it is a fitting beginning. As you know, this is a story of a old man who's been a slave for a very long time and who finally escapes. The story follows the old man's escape. And what I like about the story is that you have a joining of man and nature, but from three perspectives. So you have the perspective of the slave, you have the perspective of the master who's trying to find his slave, and you have the mastiff, the dog that is hunting the old slave man. And you discover through the escape how nature is like freedom, but it's also a prison at the same time, because this takes place in Martinique. And when we talk about slavery, we often talk about it from an American perspective, slavery in the South, and we don't often get tales that are told to us about slavery from the slaves that were in the islands. And it's true, the intensity of slavery suddenly becomes a little different when you imagine you're on an island and you're trying to escape. Where can you go? Now, that of course there are, the stories of what they call the Maroons, are the black people that escaped and went up into the hills on the islands, and they are sort of like the mystery of where people could actually escape to. But in essence, it still is as if though you are imprisoned and there is no real escape. The story begins with a fairly detailed explanation of the old man's life as a slave, but most importantly, it gives you a good idea of his character and how he has lived this time as a slave. So his escape is almost done as if it's breathing. This is not an escape in struggle or desperate planning or anything like that. This is an escape of the fact that it's natural. It's something that he has to do. Escape this life as a slave before he dies, because he is old. Now, the thing I said before about nature is the nature shows the savagery of the place that we're in, but there is a certain beauty that is described through the writing of Chamoiseau. And that's one of the things I want to talk about. Like, in this novel, it is extremely descriptive, but that description is necessary to put us into the mindset of this old slave escaping and what he's going to find. You discovered as a reader the way he discovers it. And I think that's an interesting aspect to it, because it gives this slave a certain status that is slightly above the master that is chasing him down. The thing that I said is that this escape and this discovery of nature is from three perspectives. And you see how all three, slave master, the slave, and the dog, They all have a certain fear of nature and of what could become of them in this vast, surprising, savagely growing nature. And that is what drives the story. That's all I'm going to say for the moment. It is, okay, I will tell you this. The story, it's very short. It's about 153 pages. And it is partitioned into 7 parts. I'm not going to tell you what the names of the parts are because that will kind of give away what's going to happen. But each part is the title of each part basically describes some aspect of nature that the slave, the master, and the mastiff are going to encounter. And it also, like I said, joins this small story together to give you a full perspective from the 3 points of view, with the idea that the slave perspective, I think, is the most important part of the novel. As far as the writing, it is excellent. The writing is detailed, it's poetic, it's heartbreaking, it's joyful, it's everything combined. And the descriptions are intense and full-bodied. So if you are the kind of person who doesn't like to read stories that have so much description, then you're not going to like this book. But that's the kind of book I like, especially when the descriptions are as well done as they are in this little tiny book. There's another aspect to this book that is interesting, is I encourage you to be very good about reading the translator's note in the beginning and the afterword at the end by Linda Coverdale, because those are going to be 2 aspects that are going to be important to you understanding this book. Keep in mind this book is translated from French and from French Creole. So as you're reading along, you're going to have a lot of expressions that are French or French Creole that she writes directly into the translation, the English translation. And what they do is you have to go to the back and you have to follow the notes. So normally this would be something that I think that would be written at the bottom as a footnote, but it's written in the back as notes. And I strongly suggest that you do turn back to read the notes to help you understand better the French word in the English translation. The English translation, I think, is done very well, because I know it probably wasn't easy for her to do this translation, but I think it's done very, very well. Another thing is in the afterword, there is a quote in the afterword. It says, "How to write when morning till dreams, your imaginings take nourishment from images, thoughts, values that are not your own. How to write when what you are stagnates outside of the fevers that determine your life. How to write dominated." Now, this theory of writing in a dominated land kind of has some autobiographical ideas and reflections, and I think this is the driving force in this novel, but I think in all of Chamoiseau's novels. Now, I've only read this one and I've read parts of Texaco, but I'm planning on reading Texaco this month, and I will be able to confirm what I'm, putting out there as an idea. This idea of writing dominated. And I think that is something that is an inspiring factor in what Chamoiseau decides to write about. And it's something that you have to keep in mind. And it's something that I would like to think about a bit more through reading more Caribbean literature, because I wouldn't be surprised if that idea is something that runs through a lot of Caribbean lit, this idea of writing dominated. So that's all I have to say on this book. I strongly, strongly urge you to read it if you like literary fiction and if you like descriptive novels. I gave this a 5-star. Definitely a must read. This is probably one of the best books I've read so far this 2018, besides maybe 2 other ones. I think I haven't given very many 5 stars this year so far, but I definitely recommend this one. So that's all I have for you today. Bye.